it's Mrs. Glenn. Welcome to the 2.1 1 and 2 step equations. In this video, you'll understand how to solve for equations that have either 1 or 2 steps. And the whole point of solving equations, remember, is to get the variable by itself. And so let's get started. So we have n plus 12 equals 10. So what I like to do is I like to draw a line down through my equal sign. And that just separates the left-hand side from the right-hand side so that I can make sure that I'm keeping my equation balanced. Because whatever you do to one side, you need to do to the other. So the first thing I need to look for is where the variable is and what is being done to the variable. So right now this is being adding with 12. So we need to do the inverse operation. So that's the opposite operation. So that would be minus 12. And if I do that to one side, I need to do it to the other. These cancel out because 12 minus 12 is 0. And I'm just left with m equals 10 minus 12 is negative 2. So that's your answer. M equals negative 2. Then for the next one, we've got negative 2 equals g minus 9. So again, draw my line. And then I'm going to look to see what is happening with the variable. And this is being subtracted g minus 9. So I'm going to do the opposite, which is adding 9. And remember, if I do it to one side, I have to do it to the other. So negative 9 plus 9 is 0, so this cancels out. I drop the g down. And we have negative 2 plus 9, which is a positive 7. So g equals 7. And the next one, now we're talking about multiplication. So the opposite of multiplying is dividing. So I'm going to draw my line again. This time, instead of adding or subtracting, we're dividing to get rid of it, because whenever you have a variable and a coefficient next to each other, that means they're multiplying. So I just draw a fraction line, and we're going to divide by whatever's not y. So right now that would be negative 7. And if we do that to one side, we have to do it to the other, which would equal, get my calculator out, negative 91 divided by negative 7 is 13. So y would equal 13. Where is there? There we go. Next one. A over 9 equals negative 4. Now this one's a little tricky. So we're going to draw our line. So right now A is being divided by 9. So the opposite of division is multiplying. So if you multiply by 9 on one side, you have to multiply by 9 on the other. And then these cross cancel, leaving it with just 1 on the bottom and 1 over here. So A over 1 is just A. And then negative 4 times 9 will give you negative 36. And that would be your answer for this one. To get rid of fractions, you have to multiply by the reciprocal. So reciprocal just means that you are flipping it upside down. So if you're talking about 1/2, flipping on 1/2 upside down would just be 2 over 1. You're making the bottom be the top and the top be the bottom. So it just flips it right upside down. So let me see if I can actually flip it to show you what I mean. Well, let me select it. Maybe not. Nope, never mind. All right, so for this one, we are doing, and if you remember, keep, change, flip. You probably learned that in middle school, where you keep the first number, change the sign to multiplying, and then flip the second one that you're multiplying with. So keep, change, flip. This is the same idea because we're trying to essentially divide to get these out. So this is 2/3 that we are keeping. We're dividing to get out of it. So instead of division, we change the sign to multiplication. And then we have to flip the second one that we're dividing by. So we're dividing by 2/3, remember. So when we flip it, we're now going to be multiplying by 3 over 2. So the easier way to do that, rather than remembering keep, change, flip, is just know that when you see a fraction with a variable, to get rid of it, you just have to multiply by the reciprocal. But I was just explaining to you why we're multiplying by the reciprocal. So the whole point of that is you can cross cancel. The 3 cancels with the 3, the 2 cancels with the 2, and that just leaves you with k. So we're going to draw our line again, and remember, if you are multiplying by 3/2 on one side, you have to multiply by 3/2 on the other. So then after we cross cancel, that just leaves us with k. And when we multiply with fractions, we just go straight across, so we can put it under 1. So we just go straight across. 10 times 3 is 30. And 1 times 2 is 2. So then that just leaves us with 15 as our final answer. Next one, again, you're multiplying by the reciprocal. Make sure you multiply with the negative because that gets rid of the negative on the variable. So again, we're just multiplying by the reciprocal, so we're flipping it upside down. So we have 5 on top, 6 on the bottom. I like to put my negative on the top number because right here this kind of looks like either an extended fraction line, and this can kind of get fuzzy whether or not there's a negative there. So I always put my negative on the top numerator. So we do that. We multiply by negative 5, 6 on the other side. Remember the 5, 6 came from just flipping this upside down. So then these cross cancel, just leaving you with m. Draw our line. So then you have m equals, and we're going to make a little 1 here so we can go straight across. 12 times negative 5 is negative 60. 1 times 6 is 6. And negative 60 divided by 6 is a negative 10. And that would be your answer for this one. Two-step equations. So that's just having two different operations, inverse operations that you're having to do to solve for the variables. So draw our line to start with. And then what I like to do is start with anything that's adding or subtracting because that makes things a lot easier. So we're going to subtract 8 on both sides, leaving you with 6x, which you want to bring down. Every time you go down another line, bring everything that you haven't used yet down to the same line so that you don't forget anything. Then you have 50 minus 8, which is 42. And then the inverse of multiplying would be division. So we divide by 6 on both sides, leaving us with 42 divided by 6, which is 7. So work with your adding, subtracting first, and then do your division last. 7 minus 3y equals 34. Again, draw your line. Starting with your adding or subtracting first. So we have plus 7 that we're dealing with. So we're going to subtract 7 to get rid of it. So then you're left with negative 3y. Remember, drop it down. Equals 34 minus 7 is 17. Or 27, sorry. And then we're dividing by the negative including in the front of this 3, because if you just divide by 3, you're going to be left with a negative y, and we're solving for the regular y, not a negative y. So we're going to divide by negative 3 on both sides, which will turn our answer into negative, and that's okay. Y would equal negative 9. So these cancel out, and then you're doing 27 divided by negative 3, giving you negative 9. All right, next one. Again, draw our line. And then we're going to do whatever is minus, subtracting or adding. So we're going to add 7, which is the opposite of minus 7, which x divided by 2 we need to drop down. And 9 plus 7 is 16. So again here, if we're trying to get x by itself, x is being divided by 2 right now. So I'm going to change the color so you can see what I'm doing. So we're going to multiply by 2 to get rid of it. So because it's dividing, we have to do the opposite of dividing, which is multiplying. So then these cross cancel, leaving you with x. And 16 times 2 is 32. You can always check your work to see if you're right as well. 32 divided by 2 is 16, and then 16 minus 7 gives you 9. So you know you have the right answer. All right, next one. This looks a little complicated, but it's not. It's just the same type of problem. We're just doing like 2 problems in one, essentially, is what this is. So negative 10, the opposite of negative 10 is positive 10. These cancel out. Bring down 7/4 p. And negative 38 plus 10 is negative 28. And remember, if you want to get a fraction with a variable by itself, you just multiply by the reciprocal. So this turns into 4 over 7. And we're going to do the same thing to the other side. Keep it balanced. So then these cross cancel. leaving you with just P equals, and negative 28 times 4 is 102, 112. Sorry guys, I have a migraine, so I'm not thinking totally correctly. Negative 28 times 4 is negative 112. I guess I am thinking correctly. I just didn't say the negative. All right, so negative 112. Yes, the color changed. And remember, we have a 1 underneath this, so 1 times 7 is 7. Then you're going to simplify that by dividing by 7. So P would equal 16. Negative 16, because it's a negative divided by a positive. Notice how I make a space there because I don't like the equal next to the negative because it can get confusing. So let me just go back to where we were. So negative 28 times 4 is negative 112. 1 times 7 is 7. And then negative 112 divided by 7 gives us our negative 16. All right, next one. Draw our line. And we're going to deal with whatever is adding or subtracting first. So we're going to do the opposite, which is minus 8. You do it to one side, you got to do it to the other. It's kind of like a little sibling. When the older sibling gets something, the little sibling needs to get something too, or they're going to cry and complain. So this is our little sibling, and this is our big sibling. All right, so these cancel out. C over negative 5 is on the right-hand side, and then 11 minus 8 gives us 3. So C is being divided by negative 5, so what should you do? What's the opposite of dividing by negative 5? Multiplying by negative 5. Everybody say, yay, I got that right. Or, yeah, Mrs. Glenn, I had that. All right, so these cross cancel, leaving you with C equals, and negative 5 times 3 is negative 15. Bada boom, bada bang, and we're done with that one. Okay, this one's a little bit more complicated, but not too much. It just looks a little different, but it's not too bad. So we're just going to draw our line. And right now, this whole thing on top is being divided by negative 2. So you need to multiply by negative 2 to get that out of the bottom. So we're going to multiply by negative 2 on both sides. I'm going to put this in parentheses so that dot doesn't look like a minus sign. So these cross cancel, leaving you with n minus 5 on this side. And negative 7 times a negative 2 would give you a positive 14. Now this looks pretty simple, right? This is back to the one step that we did in the beginning. So we're just adding 5, and you get n equals, that's a really bad n, Mrs. Glenn. That looks like a squiggle. N equals 19. That are your goal. And that is all. Go Seahawks. Woo!